A lot of people consider it a dead-end job, at least politically, but that's not stopping 5 people from running for Richmond mayor. Richmond returned to a popularly elected mayor in 2004, having had a figurehead mayor selected by city council since the late 1940s. The idea behind direct election: one person would be accountable for whether Richmond works or doesn't. One of the biggest proponents of a mayor elected by the people, not the politicians, was, well, one of the city's and the state's best-known politicians, Doug Wilder. He'd been the nation's first elective black governor. It was among several firsts synonymous with Wilder. Another was that after pushing Richmond voters to change their form of government, Wilder was selected by them as the city's first popularly elected mayor in 60 years. Wilder, because he's Wilder, shook things up at City Hall. He brought in solid people, and he picked fights with, among others, members of the school board. As far as Wilder was concerned, they had it coming. The schools were and remain underwhelming. All this took a toll on Wilder's standing. He chose not to seek a second 4-year term. Wilder presumably would argue otherwise, but polling at the time showed him to be, well, wildly unpopular. Next was Dwight Jones, a former legislator and minister. He served 2 terms, a total of 8 years. Jones was mayor during that deep recession that helped lift Barack Obama to the presidency, the first person of color to win that office. Obama convinced Congress to set aside billions in federal dollars for so-called shovel-ready projects. And there were a bunch of them around town. Jones was always happy to announce them, preferably in front of the television cameras. But often Jones wasn't particularly visible, and that doesn't help with those whose opinions matter most, voters. Jones also worked the deal with a hospital chain, under which it would finance the bonds issued to pay for the Washington Commanders' training camp here. The team no longer is training in Richmond, and that had folks complaining about a lot of wasteful spending. After Jones came LeVar Stoney, the current mayor. He too has been elected to 2 terms. That's the maximum allowed by law. Stoney's been mayor through some difficult times: the coronavirus pandemic, riots, and civil unrest after George Floyd was murdered by a Minneapolis police officer, and 3 big projects that never got off the ground. The first was a downtown redevelopment scheme. City Council wasn't keen on that. Then there were 2 goes at building a casino in South Richmond. Voters turned it down both times. All this was seen as nothing more than an attempt by Stoney to have something to talk about when he ran for the job he really wants, governor. But that didn't work out because his opponent for the Democratic nomination in 2025, Abigail Spanberger, pretty much had it in the bag. So Stoney dialed back. Now he's running for lieutenant governor. If he's lucky, he may have a shot at the governorship in 2029. That would be the year after Richmond's next mayoral election, when whoever's picked this year could very well find himself or herself picked on by the voters. The reason? All they want to know is that the city works, which is something they don't think has happened since switching back to direct election of the mayor. For the Richmond Times-Dispatch, this is Jeff Shapiro.